Good morning, folks. Welcome to America's Talk Show, the unaffiliated after to Mark Halperin's Two-Way. Today is Friday, June 27th, 2025. If the news cycle is making you go, what the F? No, WTF. Welcome to OTF, Off Topic Fridays. All right, let's have a good time here, if that's possible. Okay, and Dan, with your hand up, give me a second here. I'll throw you an unmute. Go ahead.
It's just getting beyond silly now, the way Mark is like, "Hey Dan, what do you think about this?" He gets two words in, and then he's like, "No, no, 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 you're wrong. You're wrong. What else do you think, Dan? No, no, you're wrong. You're wrong about that." It's like, I mean, it's just hard to take Mark seriously at this point. And then I understand that he doesn't like the press and the media, but like after what Pete Hegseth did yesterday in that press conference attacking Jennifer Rubin, and like it's just ridiculous. Like, that's our First Amendment. And if you have a problem with something that a reporter says or reported, challenge them. Like, this ridiculousness of like the press is corrupt and the media, all they do is attack Trump. Trump attacks them. It goes both ways. Get over it. That's all.
Thank you for that, Dan. Okay. Luke had a comment in the chat. I was wondering if Luke wouldn't mind sharing. Let's see. I'm going to throw Luke an unmute. He may be in a car, though.
Not in a car. I'm home.
Home. Okay. Okay. Well, we never know. You're always up and about.
No. I think the biggest for Sean, you're right. I mean, Sean, he needs to be a little bit more open about letting Dan fight back and let him give his opinion on it. But for Mark, I mean, this is his bread and butter is journalism, and making sure journalism is correct is like his number one thing comparative to either the Republicans or the Democrats. He doesn't care if you're a Republican or Democrat. If you're hurting journalism and making journalism look bad, he's gonna roast you. So I think that's why he's very upset, because I think what's going on is Dan is kind of just trying to give her the benefit of the doubt, and Mark is just like, no, I can't give her any of that, because it was so wrong that it wasn't because of her, but it was like because of everybody else just following along with her. I think he's just upset, especially because you could also hear he was very upset with how they didn't talk about the other things that were going on. I just feel he is as extremely frustrated as anyone in the journalism industry could be about their own industry. I mean, I'm upset with my industry in times, but I think Mark is just super mad.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Luke. Yes. There was also some talk of China on the morning show. I don't know if anyone caught a little bit of that, but I'm going to throw an unmute to Daryl and see what's on his mind. Daryl's like,
well, so I have to work, so I'm kind of like not even really paying attention. I'm sorry, guys. I'm here to support the group, but
okay. It's all good. It's all good. It's all good.
Sorry, guys.
We're glad to have the support there. All right. Let me just see what else is going on in the chat here. Duke says chicken egg syndrome. What came first? Okay. All right. I'm not even going to go into that here. And let's see if Haley's available, or maybe she's also working. What's going on, Haley?
Give me 5 minutes. I'm just getting situated along the beach.
Very good. Very good. Very good. ML, what's going on?
Not much. This week has been pretty crazy. We we bounced around from, could be World War III all the way out to maybe we don't want to have a communist in New York. And everywhere in between. As far as it goes, there's a lot of talk and there's a lot of rumblings that the one big beautiful bill is going through some trials and tribulations. Apparently, there is a Senate parliamentarian who stripped out like 4 or 5 like really big things from the Senate, so they got to reconcile that. And then I think they still want to push them to do something or get something out by 4th of July. But as Aaron and Vinny and many others who know that process very well, that's a big, 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 tall order. So we'll see.
Okay, and Vincent, I'm going to throw you in unmute. Seems like you have some insider information, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Yeah, sure. No, I I actually, during two-way, I contacted a few lobbyists on K Street who listen to the program, who Mark knows. And I said, I don't see any way that this is getting done by next Friday. And they texted me back, agreed. So I don't know where that's coming from. I don't see how that's going to happen. So
Another thing in the chat, Vincent, you care to comment or you can pass, but about this court ruling on birthright citizenship, did you hear anything about that?
no, I haven't heard anything yet. Did they announce that right now?
Okay,
And are they doing it at 11 o'clock?
let's see. I threw Duke and unmute. Duke, would you care to comment about that?
Yeah, Fox News is saying right now that they've ruled in favor. It looks like in favor of Trump, but that the dissent said that there would be a lot of class action lawsuits filed, telling parents to file class action lawsuits immediately upon the birth of their child. I just happened to look up and see it, so they're announcing it right now on Fox.
Duke, if you would, for the YouTube viewers that have no idea, what was the current, what's the proposal? Like, could you expand on like what was going on or what's at stake here?
Yeah, the birthright citizenship, their Trump's group questioned whether the 14th Amendment granted instant birthright citizenship to, Supreme Court also limits use of nationwide injunctions that block Trump's birthright citizenship order. That's what it is.
Okay, all right.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to do two things at once, and that's hard for me.
We've discussed this before, and I know a lot about this issue. I just wanted to tell the audience that this issue dates back to the Reagan administration, the issue of anchor babies, and this is an old Republican chestnut that's been over at the Republican Party for years. And I try to explain to people, we're on two-way. How many people have ever been members of the Democratic Republican Party or the Republican are members of their state Republican Party, Democrat or Republican, on two-way? If you were ever a member, like somebody like Dan, I know has been a member of his state Democratic Party because he is very informed about issues. And then conversely, there's people that are in state Republican parties that have been listening to the same narrative for like 40 years. And it applies to the Democratic state parties too. If you go to a Democratic state party function, you're going to be hearing about Roe v. Wade since 1973. So every year you go to the function, you pay your money, and there's certain themes. So once again, in conclusion, the anchor baby theme has been presented at the state Republican parties in all 50 states for 40 years. This is something new, not new, that President Trump rolled out, and it was discussed early on by Mark on two-way that many of the goodies in the goodie basket in the Republican Party that people have been asking for 40 years, dating back to the Reagan administration, Trump is finally opening the bag of goodies and with all those executive orders. So, and everybody that's wanted something got it when he became president for the second time.
Okay, appreciate that, Vincent. We're gonna bring in Haley.
So I was thinking about something that we talked about yesterday on the after show. Andre mentioned it. And I haven't been able to get it out of my head. And it was about Pete Hegseth and the program that you said, Andre, that he basically like cut. And I think it like kind of cemented for me. I don't know if anybody else agrees with me, but I really think that Pete Hegseth is a sexist. I think that especially, I mean, we can go into his personal things with his ex-wives. I think that there's a lot of trouble with him and women. I think that he has a very outdated stance about women in the military. And I was a woman, not in this military, but in a military. So it kind of touches to my heart. And like, I don't know if it's a widespread belief in the Republican Party, but there is a woman problem.
What was the specific allegation, Haley? I missed it.
Yesterday, Andre said that when he came in to be Secretary of Defense, he cut a program that basically allowed women more opportunities to get into the military in all different types of circumstances, civilian and if I'm not mistaken, boots on the ground. Andre obviously can explain it better. But he did get rid of a program where it gave women the opportunity to enter the military in any circumstance. And I'm not one for like quotas, and I don't like that. I don't like hiring people just because of their race or gender. But when it comes to certain jobs and certain opportunities, where there is a very big discrepancy between the genders, a little bit of initiative for one of the genders is not a bad thing, in my opinion. Like, just to give them an extra step of getting into the door, basically was what the program was. Not even getting them the job, but just getting their foot in the door. And it's a long history of his statements against women, his what's it called? His behavior towards his ex-wives. Like, there are a lot of things there that are really, really ugly. But on a broader sense, I do think that the Republicans have a problem with women, like just like the Democrats have a problem with men. And I don't think either one is, obviously the Democrats with the men is a whole bigger issue, but I don't think the Republicans are addressing their issue with women too. But I also think the women of the Republican Party like aren't standing up for like, we're going to be okay with like the trans stuff. But there's so much more to that. Like, there's so much more that we still should be fighting for, in the Republican Party. So I'm just like, that's where my head was this morning. I couldn't get out of my head, Andre, because I think it's just like, I think it's really gross, especially for a cabinet secretary. I really don't like Pete Hegseth. I never did. But just hearing that kind of rang like a big red flag for me. Like, okay, this guy, I think is probably a sexist. I don't know if anybody else agrees with me.
Just one question, Haley. The B-2 bombers, I heard one of the pilots was a female. Did you hear that? Is that correct? Oh, Haley went on mute. Okay, Andre, I'll unmute.
One of the bomber pilots was a female airman, and we had also female airmen in the fighter jets, as well as the air tankers. So it's a full-on both genders.
So, I mean, as at least as far as I just want to clarify for the YouTube viewers out there, right? I mean, as far as the operation is concerned, right? I mean, women were involved in it, so there's no one saying anything about the operation, right? And I'm going to unmute.
Well, it was addressed in the press briefing where he was asked, "Why do you keep saying boys? Why can't you acknowledge that?"
Well, okay, hold on.
Hold on. I'll add what happened. So, and then when he was pressed on this, he turned to the Joint Chiefs and said, "Oh, he talked about that. I don't have to say anything about that."
But okay, now we're getting into when we say like you guys. Oh, wait a minute, Haley's not a guy, and
no,
see,
there's a difference though. Like when you're talking in a normal setting, that like nobody cares.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about military service members and you're calling them the boys, it's like it is a slap in the face. Like if like let's say my commander in the IDF called us the boys and we were an all-girl unit, like it's unnecessary, and it just comes to a history of like the things that he's done, that he said about women, that he's acted towards women. It's just like, first of all, if you are a sexist, like don't say sexist things.
Well,
try
okay,
to
hold on. Now we're getting into a little circular. If you are, then don't, right? But I mean, as far as we know, he's currently married, right?
It's his fourth wife.
Okay, but I mean, this is where the grace comes in.
And wait, let me correct, okay. But the grace is that I'm not talking about the rape that he was alleged, because that was I don't believe that happened.
Okay, right.
But he has had domestic abuse issues with many women. This isn't rape, this is domestic abuse. And cops were called on his there was at least 2 ex-wives, I think, that alleged very serious domestic abuse. And there's a difference between I just like why even start with this guy? And I did see in the chat about like women in the military, and that's a debate I guess we can have, but I come from the IDF, where in Jewish law girls are not allowed to fight on the front lines. It's just this is the first war in Gaza where girls were actually able to enter Gaza. They were navigators and medics and all of that. They still are not active duty fighting. They're not allowed to be fighters in Gaza or in Lebanon or whatever. But as a woman in the IDF would not run without women. Like, it's just not possible. The background jobs, everything that supports the fighting on the front lines, there is no way that the country would run without women in the military. And I have a feeling that's the same in the American military. And it's just the fact of life. And people, just like, in my opinion, for Pete, like, get over it. Like, women are in the military, and accept it and just move on. And if you don't like it, then you shouldn't be Secretary of Defense. Sorry,
okay.
guys.
All right. No, thank you for that, Haley. Yeah. And that's why I wanted to point out for the YouTube viewers, right, that like, okay, maybe there's some program that got taken away, but whatever program might have been removed, that most recent significant action that happened, this bombing of these nuclear sites, involved women. So, I mean, the actual action is that women are involved in the most advanced military, capabilities or whatever. And women of color were involved in semiconductor manufacturing. But that's another story. Dan, with your hand up, I'm going to throw you an unmute.
So when you take what's happening in Los Angeles with the ICE raids and the racial profiling and kidnapping of people without due process, what Trump is doing with the LGBTQ community, taking away suicide hotlines, what's happening with this birthright citizen issue, what they did to take away the history of Jackie Robinson in the military at I believe the Department of Defense, the Tuskegee Airmen. It's very clear that this administration is very nervous about the unwhitening of America, and they're creating policies because they don't like Black and brown people and people of minorities, people that are minorities, excuse me. So the evidence is there, time and time again.
Okay, all right. And I'll remind the YouTube viewers out there, over 4 million African Americans voted for Donald Trump. Anywhere from 4 to 6 million, the number can't be established, and that this is what people voted for, that a broken immigration system and people that honestly trespassed, okay? And if we apply the golden rule and we don't treat people from the so-called third world like they don't know what's going on, okay? People know what's going on. They know that there's a line, there's a queue, there's ways of skipping the queue, and this is where we're going. Obama was called deporter-in-chief. Obama dropped over 50,000 bombs or something like that. 500,000 dead Libyans. So I just only bring up the past because the media doesn't have any sort of similar standard there. ML, with your hand up?
Yeah, Hegseth didn't do himself any favors with his verbiage, but he was hired to be a pugnacious and a fighter, just like Donald Trump and in his own image, I mean, in Hegseth's style and wizardry, so to speak. I personally don't think it's a big deal. I think he should have taken a page from Trump's playbook, which was he just said pilots. He didn't say boys or men or women, and I think it is colloquial known as the boys or whatever. Generally, now it is 2025, and there are certain ears we're going to hear that and have a different, take on it, and that's fine. That's fine too. But as far I'm unaware of any significant pattern of history of domestic abuse with Hegseth, aside from the one report that was filed by the woman who cheated on her husband with the kids in the in the hotel room because they all got too sloppy and drunk. Hegseth did have a lot of baggage, and I don't think that I think he just kind of made it over the goal line as far as like it goes. But as far as it goes, I don't see anything that I don't see anything in his behavior or conduct thus far. So he said the wrong words. I could care less. And now other people, I get it. They have other sensibilities. I do care. The whole point is it plays more into the more the media fights him on it, the more it gives him purchase to fight back and say, see, this is exactly what he did. He just stood there for two minutes and just lectured the media and the one gal on, what this is a lethal fighting force military, da 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 da, blah 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 blah, whatever. And kind of going back to what Andrij said before that program, at least they're consistent for eliminating the DEI. They were not kidding. They meant everything or even perceived DEI things. But Hegseth is the man, and I think Mark has been kind of down on him for a while as far as like his longevity. Maybe he'll get replaced. I don't know. Who knows? But and anyway, thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that, ML. And I just wanted to credit Daryl with this in the chat. And I will say this applies not just to Republicans, but again, Jeffersonian Democrats of the world unite, right? I think it's less Republicans don't like these people. It's that we are tired of government resources going to these groups. We don't support LGBT ideology or lifestyle, so we're not going to pay for it anyway. Go live your life like anyone else. No special anything, okay? Singleness of purpose, right? Focus on whatever the government entity is and none of this diversity stuff, okay? I've been attending 12-step meetings and women will say, hey guys, and then the moderator's like, please avoid gender, da 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 da. And it's like, dude, this isn't this gender controlling speech stuff. It's like, we're done with it, right? So anyways, that's the personal comments. Wesley, I'm going to unmute you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, and stop making up terms like cis, whatever. Anyway, I will say, Haley, no one in the conservative circles that I float in, social and fiscal conservatives, are trying to put women back in the kitchen, for example, and saying that they can't serve in military roles. You said, just get over it. Well, get over what? I mean, I have no problem if my daughter wants to volunteer and serve in the military, and I would think most conservatives would fall in line. What Hegseth has said is that the standards for certain MOSs, which had been relaxed for gender, the reason that they were in, and I'm very familiar with the Marine Corps, having served in the Marines, they relaxed the fitness standards for females for combat MOSs because they physically could not do what the males could do. And what Hegseth said is no, for a forward combat role, you have to complete the exact same fitness standards that the males have to do. If you want to be a mortar person, then you have to be able to carry the base mortar plate and things like this. And there hasn't been so far as I know, a single female who has passed the new Marine Corps combat fitness standards in certain MOSs. So another thing is, and I don't think this should be mandated by force, but I think just as an overall observation, I would like the men to be put in harm's way and to be defenders of the women. I think that is a dinosaur position these days. I acknowledge that, but I would take issue and in fact would not allow my daughters to register for selective service, which Obama kind of floated that idea that females should be required just like the males. I don't believe in the equalization of gender roles. I think there should be equalization of our dignity, equalization of our opportunity, but I don't think that males and females should always serve in the exact same capacity, right? And I think that's a fair position. So I both don't want to hold females back, but there are certain combat roles that you need to be able to maintain the same fitness standards as a male would, right? And if you can't do it, I'm sorry. I don't want to put you in harm's way.
All right. Thank you for that, Wesley. Professor Kenny, I'm going to unmute you. Please go ahead.
Hey, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yeah, so this is what I'm going to say in terms of what Dan Olivo brought up. Dan's not completely wrong, but what Daryl also said, with our tax-paying dollars, the problem is we kind of use that tax-paying dollars excuse to kind of segregate people out of what we want to happen. So the argument about Jackie Robinson and in the military, like, it wasn't like he was this great soldier. So I don't even know why it's being brought up. I mean, you know what I mean? Not that, nothing against Jackie Robinson, but he's more relevant to baseball than he is to being in the army. You know what I mean, being in the military, I mean. So that kind of stuff. But we need to pay attention to these things. I've been on this kick lately, with the anti-Semitism, and we can't have it both ways. If you're an anti-Semite, you got to be called out. If you're a racist, you got to be called out. I think of this in Trump's world. Remember Tim Scott? What is he? South Carolina, North Carolina? He rode hard with Trump, and he got nothing out of it. Okay, so I'm just, that's just something to keep an eye on. That's all. And I'm not putting Trump down in terms of his other policies, but I'm just saying when it comes to these racial things and these biases, we do have to pay attention to them in some way.
Okay, thank you for that, Professor Kenny. Luke, throw you an unmute.
Oh, okay. I was just looking at the Supreme Court issue so that we saw, because everybody's kind of freaking out about it. So it isn't actually about the the citizen birthrights that we were talking about earlier, though that one could come up in a little bit later. This was more about the question of, do judges have the opportunity to pretty much give universal bans on something that is being done by a sitting president? And it was 6-3. It was saying, no, you can't do a universal. So if there is a case where you say this person's having trouble, you could, for example, put a precedent on that one person so that, like, for example, they don't go to jail. But you can't say all people who are doing this are not going to be able to be put into courts or have that happen to them. So in a sense, this is I think this is actually probably going to be the most interesting case to talk about comparative to this other stuff, because I think it is a question of, okay, does the president, how far can the president go with this? Because it is a 6-3, meaning that it's most likely not going to get taken out, but there's going to have to be some kind of really strong precedent now to prove that this is not appropriate.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that, Luke. Andre?
Yeah, I'm still catching up on the Supreme Court stuff. Listening to the original argument The liberal court justices in their dissent are just picking up on the same thing about the class action. How do you, meaning if you don't have a nationwide injunction against something, how do you then have these people address their rights being taken away? And it's going to be interesting how this works out. It's not going to be an instant thing of thousands of class actions across the country. But getting back to Haley, I prefer Haley have the last word about women in combat because she's a woman who served. So it's always good to shut up when that happens. But I did put the link in for what WPS existed prior to Hegseth doing that. There was no report done. There was no DOD review. It was simply a canceling of the process. This is the same thing that was done with transgender. I know people have opinions about whether they should serve or not. There were people with recommendations from their ranking officers that they should serve, that they should deserve a promotion. Again, no review, straight up, it's gone, it's done. This is the same thing we were arguing about the military bases as well. There's no review, there's no process, it's just top down. We're going to make this decision, and that's the end of it. Why it's important beyond, it's not a word thing where people get offended that somebody's calling boys. It's trying to build a culture within a system, specifically when veterans of the Air Force were questioning Pete Hegseth about this, knowing that in the Air Force Academy, the sexual assault rate was 12% in 2003 before these programs came in. 70+% of women enrolled in the academy reported some kind of sexual impropriety against them. It's the fact that this Secretary of Defense, Haley has, a mention about, him being a misogynist, but it's what he does with his actions when he uses words like boys, like the famous locker room culture where we were all talked about that it's all okay. It's not okay when you're leading an organization of 2 million people, which is what the Department of Defense is, and you don't tell people that they're boys, that there are standards that people have to apply to. That's what the military had. That's what the DOD had. He is throwing away standards. And every time anybody complains about the standards of women being introduced and stuff, all of that stuff was done after a process of review and review. And I will say that more people were affected not by the change of standards for women, but more people were affected by the fact that they allowed people who are older not to carry the same kind of backpacks that we were talking about earlier. So it was more that the standard was changed for age requirements for people, and some of those were left in different services. That's not gone. It seems that he only focused on women in terms of what he threw away, what happened before.
Okay, Andre, and I wanted to give you an opportunity. Yesterday, you made a comparison between the Bundy Ranch situation and squatters.
Sure.
Do you
I think
still...
it was 2 days ago, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you. See, your memory is better than mine. So do you want to clarify that, or do you still maintain that the freedom of Bundy ranchers and homesteading is the same as people camping on trails, pitching tents on trails?
I was saying that we have an inherent libertarian aspect to our Constitution, i.e., there are things that are delineated as inalienable rights in our Constitution, and then all other rights are reserved to local governments and or the people themselves. It's not that if it's not listed there, we don't have the right to do it. We have different levels of right, and there's an inherent right in our country that our government doesn't tell us what to do. And if people want to say that they just want things to be clean, just don't want to see people there, people do have a right to assemble. People do have a right to be free in this country.
But there's I don't know of any city that allows camping on trails, though, right? Like a walking trail. That's city ordinances, right? So you have to have a clear, like you can't, when you picket and protest, right? You have to allow the sidewalks to be clear, right? You can't block people, mobility.
There's a safety regulation for some of that. That's same thing with that's used to break up camps. Leaning on the side of public safety. But I think during COVID, people had a different opinion of what public safety rules are. I think we all have different opinions depending on at what moment these kind of rules are applied. And I don't think that even though we want the homelessness problem to be saved, I don't think just declaring it to be saved, that we can just, say we can eliminate this problem. It's clearly been a problem for over 100 years in this country, since we started tracking, especially since the 90s. I don't think that anybody has shown that they could do it within a matter of a year or 2 years. No city has demonstrated that they can solve it. It's a nationwide problem. And part of that problem is the fact that we allow our citizens more civil liberty than other countries do for good reason. And the other side is we have less social programs than other countries do.
Okay. All right. Andrij, I'm going to put you back on mute. About to get back to the queue here, but this is what we're talking about. Okay, using the term guys or girls inappropriateness. But again, if we're pretending like that this whole DEI thing, men's and women's restrooms, right? Prime Minister Trudeau correcting people on their use of pronouns, like all of this stuff didn't happen. And again, city ordinances, right? If any citizen pitched a tent, the cops would arrest you, okay, and deal with you as a citizen, the fact that you have something to risk, okay? But with the homeless, it's just, again, so that's why I'm trying to draw back to like all these standards of propriety, of respecting men and women, and, women's restroom was all thrown out. And now I feel like there's a lot of hair splitting going on, but I'm going to get back to the queue. Shamsul, I'm going to unmute you. You have a couple minutes.
Why don't you go back to Haley first? Because I'm going to pivot to the New York City mayoral race. I've got some comments on that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Shamsul. Haley?
Oh, Shamsul, I could go on for hours about that. But I wanted to clarify again. I don't get offended. I'm not offended about basically anything in politics. So I'm not offended by Pete's use of boys. I'm not offended by, I'm not one of these crazy women, lib feminists who are just offended at like everything. So want to clarify that. I think Andrij and I are more aligned on this. I think he's completely correct that it does breed a culture of macho-ness in a place where I just looked up the amount of sexual assault cases in the Army is actually staggering. It's almost close to 10,000 reports of sexual assault, harassment, whatever it might be. Given, let's say half of those are even, BS and the other half is true, that's still too much. Like, we have to remember that, like, women are still the number one victims of domestic abuse, sexual assault. Like, just because we went crazy in one direction, and I completely agree that we did go absolutely insane with the policing of words and all of this gender craziness, doesn't mean that there still isn't an issue here, especially in certain areas. I'm not talking about in every field of work. I'm not talking about, when we're harping back to the Me Too movement, like, it happened for a reason. Like, there were really bad dudes. Like, the fact that we overcorrected and made Me Too this absolutely ridiculous farce of itself didn't mean that it didn't start with the best of intentions. And there were bad dudes who needed to be put out of where they lived, of where they worked. Now, when it comes to the military, I can't describe the American military experience. I wasn't in the American military, so I don't want to say anything about it. I can attest to the Israeli military experience that I was in, and I don't know how it works, but I do know that basically, like, when it comes to the fitness things, when it comes to women being tested like men, it happens in Israel. You have to, let's say, for captain's courses, I'm talking about the Navy, to become a captain, you have to, as a woman and as a man, you have to go through the same exact course. There's no differentiation. If a woman passes, she becomes a captain. Same thing with, like, the Navy SEALs. They have to go through the exact same course, men and women. I don't think there has yet been a woman Navy SEAL, but maybe that will be in the future. However, when it comes to, let's say, like, frontline units, there are units in Israel that are co-ed. My husband was in a co-ed unit called Caracal. They were stationed in the south. His commanders were female. I had, female and male command. Like, it is so gender neutral in the Israeli army. I mean, I know that a lot of the F-16 fighters that just flew to Iran were women. There's a whole article in the Israeli news about one of the women. Her and her husband were in those fighter jets. So there is a way to have women be on the front, be combat in the safest of terms, quote unquote, without putting them in harm's way. So, I mean, the Israeli military has done that. I was not a combat soldier, but we were on the front lines with them. So there is a way that can be done. And I just think that Pete Hegseth is not helping the culture and the situation that already exists in the army by getting rid of these programs, by trying to create a culture of like, let's get back to, when we fought in World War II and like they were all, our best men on the front lines and things like that, which is wonderful. And I think the army is missing that. But we need to include a sect of half the population that also should be included in the culture in the army that I think it's lacking a little bit with this Secretary of
Haley.
Defense.
Wesley has a response.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with her so far as my disposition is that females who are inherently, and I'm speaking only in the sense of physical attributes, inherently put in a position to need to be protected by physically stronger men. That when it comes to sexual abuse and things like that, it is abhorrent. And again, I always lean on the side of not putting women in harm's way. And you mentioned the Me Too movement and Pete Hegseth and all of the accusations. I will say, I mean, if any of those accusations are true, then it should have been disqualifying. And briefly, I will say that, if the left hadn't postured as they did with Clarence Thomas, with Brett Kavanaugh, for example, then there would be more teeth to such allegations. But every single time there's a nominee, it's the same thing. And it's very difficult to know what's true anymore when everybody cries wolf. But I do agree with you. I certainly would be against any harm coming in the way toward our female troops, So,
Andre, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just want to add one of the things about the IDF, similar to countries like Ukraine and others that have come under direct attack, is that we very much value the participation of women because they've, out of necessity, been forced. Like Haley said, a lot of them are medics. A lot of them have been doing stuff in the front line, even though there are prescriptions against it. But when you come up against real life, that changes things. So Ukraine instituted with the rest of the world doing WPS stuff, which means by the beginning of the war in 2022, 25% of its officer corps was women. That meant when the invasion happened, there was actually an openness to women volunteering for combat. Just like the United States, there is no draft for women, but there are currently 70,000 women serving in Ukraine's forces, and 5,500 of those are frontline. And the best example of that is that to a person, of every guy I know deployed, they love their female snipers. They're some of the best combat snipers that Ukraine has had in their armed services, and that's something that would not have happened had people had this opinion of it's just the boys, we got to keep them protected, etc. These people volunteer themselves, and I feel that if you talk to countries like the IDF, like Ukraine, like other ones that have experienced other countries attacking them, you'll get a different perspective on what should happen and what actually happens, and then you learn the result of that.
Professor Kenny?
Okay. So I was in the Marine Corps too. All right. And I'm a little guy, right? I'm 5'7", right? When I was in the Marine Corps, I was 5'7" and 118 pounds. And I could do a 26-mile force march with my fellow 6-footers and carry just as much weight as them because I had to. Okay. If I couldn't do that, I would be out. Okay, so that's where I think we get things missed. So in other words, they wouldn't say, well, Professor Kenny's a little guy, but he's a great shot because I shot expert. I was an expert shot. Okay, I shot 232 at a 250. Okay, that's expert. Okay, so they wouldn't say, well, let's take Professor Kenny and put him on, in the sniper patrol because, he's a great shot, but he can't do the physical thing. If I couldn't do the physical thing, I was out. So let's just keep that in mind, what that's about. Okay. So I just want to, and listen, I'm all about women in the military as long as, you meet the standards. And there's always a role for somebody. Okay, there's always a role for somebody. We need, so in terms of like your argument, Andres, with Ukraine, yeah, get all the women you can, you know what I mean, and let them shoot the shit out of these people. So, but I get, but I'm just trying to make a comparison about this idea with women and men and physicality. Is you can be, if you don't do it as a man, you're out. In terms of the physicality. So that's what I wanted to bring up.
Thank you for that, Professor. Shamsul,
Yeah.
you've been waiting patiently.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna pivot to the mayoral mayor race.
Hang on one second, Shamsul. I think Haley wanted to respond. Let's just check in with her. Haley?
Alrighty.
No, I wanted to hear what Shamsul said. I'm
Okay,
ready
very
to talk
courteous.
all
courteous,
about the mayor race.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I want to hear afterwards also from you, Haley, and maybe Andre. I think because both of you are New Yorkers. So I was researching this Zoran guy and looking at his background and his policies. So I sort of look at myself as a third party looking outside in and trying to be as objective as I can, even though okay, I'm a capitalist and he's a self-professed socialist. So I read his policy statement. First of all, I read his policy statement, one that reads, shift the tax burden from overtaxed homeowners in the outer borough to more expensive homes in richer and whiter neighborhoods. I was like looking at that and I said, hold on, how racist does that sound? I said, if I were to write this in Malaysia and wrote it, shift the tax burden from overtaxed homeowners in the outer borough to more expensive homes in richer and more ethnic Chinese neighborhood or Jewish neighborhoods, I sound like a racist shit. So I don't understand how somebody running for one of the greatest city on earth can put out a policy statement that racist and get away with it. Okay, that's one thing I noticed. Second part is 33-year-old with that kind of background, that qualification. I won't even let him run my 40-man office. So that's my comment. But the first one, I'd really like to hear you guys' comment on that. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, it's going to be Haley and then Vincent.
You're so right on so many levels, but you have to remember that New York City is ground zero for all of this woke race thing. Like it's here, it's LA. This place eats it up. I know that New York has shifted for Trump in the recent election, like by a crazy amount, but at its core, and especially New York City, it will always be run by a Democrat or a left-leaning independent. It's never going to be, reason why I'm not going to campaign for the Republican is because he's never going to win. It's just not going to happen. So that's that. They eat it up. They love it. The Democratic base here, the progressive, they're so progressive that it would, the fact that he was elected by the people who he wants to tax the crap out of it says it in and of itself. But at the same time, he did run a fantastic campaign. It was extremely likable. He came across extremely likable, charming. Everything that Mark said, if anybody watched his podcast and his monologue, said was correct. I have problems with what Mark is saying, but he's right. The guy is a Trumpian type. Like his campaign was very Trumpian, but that's the problem. Is that it was all so his pot like New Yorkers want drastic change. I want drastic change. This city is too expensive for you walk out. They say you walk out the door and you spend $200. Like that's just how the city is. So the drastic change part is fine. Like that's okay with me. That's fine. However, he has the same issue what Bernie Sanders did when I think he went. I think it was Bill. Somebody mentioned, I don't remember which show, but when Bill Maher asked Bernie Sanders about his policies and then asked him, okay, but how are you going to pay for it? Bernie Sanders didn't have an answer for him. And I think he suffers from the same problem. And I'm putting aside his, in my opinion, Jew hatred. So on that level, he is the new fresh face. He has crazy ideas that people think, people love. People want free crap all the time. And in my opinion, is going to make the city San Francisco. And that's why I'm going to do everything in my power to stop him.
Okay. Professor Kenny?
Okay. With the mayor's race. So I think this is really a fascinating thing coming up this election, because I want to see if Eric Adams can thread the needle on this one with everybody canceling each other out. As far as this Mandami guy goes, I know Adams is going to go hard at him with all of that anti-Semitic stuff and all of these
He already
crazy.
is.
Yeah. And all of these crazy policy, legalized prostitution. And like you said, Haley, the funniest thing is the people that really got behind him are the people he's going to tax. He wants to tax the most, which is going to bring the bond value down in New York City. And then we're not going to be able to pay for, the cops, which he doesn't want anyway, right? So it's just ridiculous. But hey, he had a great campaign. He's an insurgent. And this is going to help. I think this will give us a little hint into two things, and I'll finish up here, okay, into two things, whether the Democrats are going to really go out to crush him because they're afraid of him, or if he gets through, is this the trend in our country? And this is what's going to be the key for us.
I said the other day that if he wins, AOC's running for president in 2028. That's my personal theory.
Only from your lips to God he is.
Okay. All right. Vincent, you've had your hand up there for a while. Let me unmute you. Got a minute, Vincent.
Yeah, so I've talked about this at length. So I'm the one in the chat that put that Senator Christian Gillibrand has nothing good to say about Mandani. How do you say it again?
Mandami.
Yeah, and Mandami.
2 M's.
Okay. So I put that in the chat, and then the fella from wherever he's flying to said, "Oh, I just saw that someone in the chat, Christian Gillibrand, has walked away from him." And he's like, "Is that sourced?" Yeah, it's sourced. I actually speak with Christian Senator Gillibrand because of my 9/11 experience, and also the Democrats Swazi, the Democrat wants nothing to do with Mandani, as is all the other Democrats that are in Congress in the suburbs. So, and as you know, Governor Hochul is not embracing him. So this morning when we were on the show, they were saying how Democrats are all embracing him. That's not true. Okay. Regular liberal Democrats that are moderates, or liberal Democrats or moderates, are not that are elected officials are not embracing him. Okay, they're not. And you know, it's going to be interesting if Adams can thread the needle. There was reports yesterday that the Trump administration is trying to get Curtis Sliwa a job in the Trump administration to drop out to allow Adams to have more of a lane. So that was reported yesterday, and Sliwa claims he will never drop out, but it could happen. I mean, when you start hearing rumors like that, there's always where there's smoke, there's fire. Okay. And lastly, liberal Democrat Jim Cramer was on CNBC, and he's been a liberal Democrat since the time he graduated from Harvard. He on CNBC yesterday said that Mandami, if he gets to be so powerful, might get his people to kill rich people like
Okay.
Lenin did. That's what
Okay.
he said on the air.
Yeah, well, I mean, you guys, look, the lead has been buried. The elephant in the room. No one's talking about Mamdani's wife. It took me less than a minute to look into it. I'll wait, to
No,
see.
I didn't even bring that up. They're going to be throwing so much at him, and the people that are going to be
Okay,
throwing.
Vincent, just any clue about Mamdani's wife, and then I'll get to Andre.
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay, hold on, but we have to get to
all about it.
Okay. Let me get to Andre. Andre.
It hurts me to say this, but Sean said something correct. Sean during the discussion on Mamdani did do the Trump comparison that I've been screaming about in the chat with everybody for this week. Just think about what we're saying. The more outside, and it's New York State politicians, not so much New York City-based politicians, the more they attack this guy and say, I'm not supporting him. Guess what that does to any Trump supporter when they hear that, well, this guy isn't the right guy, we shouldn't support him, etc. He is a very gifted politician. I've watched the CNN interview last night, was fantastic from him. You couldn't get a better extemporaneous on messaging. He's very gifted on camera. He's very gifted in person. That doesn't mean you win automatically. I'm just saying that guy has a lot of stuff going for him. But for me, the number one thing is he's a disruptor. All this rhetoric is the same kind of thing I hear from everybody on here who talks about Trump being piled on. I think the same thing's going to happen to him. I've learned that a lot of you guys are also Bernie people. I know a lot of Trump people who are Obama people. There's a sense in this country that we just want something different. And for New York City, unfortunately, and he was nowhere on my 5 rankings for mayor. Unfortunately, this is the guy that's connecting for the people who are looking for something outside the box. And
you're absolutely right.
Yeah. And I just think that when people try to attack him, I don't know if the traditional attacks are going to work in the same way based on how attacks on Trump didn't work. I'm not saying he's Teflon Don and can't, he's going to mess up. He's too young. He doesn't have the invincibility to roll off scandals and stuff. We haven't seen him do that. But I think the more people try to say, hey, let's get a bunch of corporations to back one candidate, I don't think there's going to be a consensus among a certain class of people for that. Wow, I have silenced everybody.
Raul, you were muted. Raul, you were muted.
Sorry, I hit the Alt button instead of the whatever. Too many buttons here. Okay, Professor Kenny, go ahead.
Okay, so just a couple things. Yeah, I don't even want to go near it. He's, listen, I think what'll be interesting to see who wins the mayor, who becomes mayor of your city, and if they get like over 30% of the vote. Yeah. I mean, because it's really going to be ridiculous. So 2 things. Raul's given me permission to do this, and I appreciate it, Raul. So next week, the 2-way is off, right? We're on vacation. So I'm going to Zoom I've sent the link out there if you're interested at from 9 to 10, and then we could transition into Raul's show here. If you guys are, I don't know who's going to show up, but I keep putting the links out there. And I only started today when I found I didn't even know they were on vacation last week. So who knows? But if we want to do a morning meeting kind of thing and then roll into this, we could do that. So I'll keep posting it in the chat. Number 2, we are having Haley, Deborah Knox, and myself are hosting a picnic August 9th in Central Park for the two-way community. You can reach out to Deborah Knox at gmail.com. You can reach out to me at youngJamesKenny at yahoo.com. Haley, I don't know your email off the top of my head, so tell them.
So fine. It's Haley. I'll put it in the chat. But
Okay.
Anybody who's able to, get to the New York City area, we would love to have you guys. We'll figure out details.
Right, we're gonna get the details down. And listen, if it's hot, like let's say it's 102 degrees that day, we'll transition to a pub nearby or something. We'll figure it out. Plus Deborah's got a little inroads for indoor stuff too. So listen, if you're in the New York area, it'd be great to see everybody. And my third plug is I'm gonna come visiting everybody cross country. So I will see you guys.
Awesome, Professor Kenny. Yeah, at first I thought you were going head to head with Mark, and I was like, whoa. And then obviously he was off next week. So glad to see you picking that slack up, as it were. And as far as Mamdani's wife, okay, so again, guys, you wonder why Mamdani's so polished, right? What did the former Mossad director tell Mehdi Hassan regarding Assad? The rules have changed, okay? The rules have changed. So, in other words, the whitewashing of Al-Qaeda, which is what his wife did, Mamdani's wife, okay, interviewed all these people released from the Syrian prisons. Who was released? The moderate Syrian rebels, former Al-Qaeda fighters, the entire white helmet, so-called Syrian Defense Force, okay, the white helmets, which got some Netflix award. You got Radiohead endorsing them, okay? Hold on one second. Hold on. I'm going to and so part of the whitewashing is how to learn to speak in the media, how do you turn a jihadi into, right? It's the, the Saudis killed the Turkish guy that was, he was a jihadi, then he was a Washington journalist, reporter, whatever. I think that's enough. I've thrown in the pot. Shamsul, I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead, sir.
I forgot what I was going to say. Yeah, leave me alone for a while, Rahul.
I know. I have a habit of
I'm
doing
sorry.
that. No, it's all good. It's all good. Dean, there you go.
Yeah, thanks. If anybody wants an idea of what I put this in the chat in the main show about that mayor fella candidate from New York, Mark Halperin did a nice job on his Next Up podcast or show, talking about the similarities between Trump and Mamdani. And I got to tell you, I wasn't on board with it at the beginning, and I had to play this part over. Mark couldn't have come up with this phrase. Maybe he did. But the phrase was, we're in a time of authenticity as performance. And Trump and apparently Zoran have mastered this. I mean, that just seems like an oxymoronic term. How can you perform authenticity? So I had to play it several times, but I'm trying to lean into the curiosity, and really a good episode on how Mark laid it out. So I'd encourage you all to take a look at that. Second, I'm glad that Sean talked about the service and winners of the week being the service. I thought that was extremely important to shine a light on the work, the flawless execution that they did. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. I would like to, no, I won't leave it at that. I'd like to see a little bit more about that mentioned in the media. And I guess lastly, to Mark's point today, he's still interrupting Dan, which drives me nuts. Finish your thought, Dan. Let me tell you why your thought is done before you finish your thought, Dan. But I think Dan's getting much stronger with his with holding on to the floor. He's doing a nice job. But it just harkened. All of this took me back to the presidential address and the fact that it doesn't matter what President Trump does. The Democrats are not going to stand up for it. They're going to turn it into a process issue. And to be fair, I'd probably do the same thing if I was on the other side of the aisle. So I don't know why I'm trying to hold them to a higher standard than I think I would do myself. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Dean. Shamsul, did you want to go?
No. I was thinking about this Mandani fella, and I was there was a few comments on what he mentioned on October 8th. I still couldn't find what was mentioned in there on any of the news feed that I was trying to Google. So that's how difficult it is with the media. I mean, you try to find out these things. It's so buried, and I don't know, maybe it's censored. I have no idea. If anybody can find that, I would love to see it, please. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it'll help the YouTube viewers to understand that there was this so-called pro-Palestine faction that was, pro-Assad, and then there was a pro-Palestine faction that was anti-Assad. Guess where the majority? Okay, and it's a Sunni-Shia split essentially, right? So the bulk of the jihadis that were anti-Assad, right? That's where that whole. It's like you can have literally two people advocating for Palestine, okay, but behind the scenes they're battling each other. Go figure. ML.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Danny, I think it is obviously supercharging the progressive wing of the Democrat Party, and conversely, if he does win, it might be not a great item for the Democrats on a national stage because it's just like every other progressive, it becomes like a punching bag, I guess. And when you have somebody that so clearly is down the line on a lot of issues that are unapologetically progressive or liberal leaning for sure, I really wonder how it's going to impact, the broader Democrat electorate. And the reality is probably not much in reality, but it's still politics is all about the invisible until it becomes visible. The things you don't know until they pop up and they are a thing. So I'm really curious to see how it will impact, or if it will kind of act as like a green light to the AOC side of the party. And I have reservations about that, but it's undeniable. There is a energetic, youthful component to the Democrat Party that has been underserved severely cycle after cycle after cycle. So it's only going to serve to reinforce the where they want to go, and to like get rid of all these get rid of all the old geezers and let the new wave come through. So it'll be very interesting. And should of note, like, not even 5 seconds, David Hogg, as soon as he got kicked out of the DNC, he hopped right over to New York City and started campaigning for his boy. But so that should not be underestimated too. So.
All right, thank you, ML. We're 8 minutes over time, folks. Please.
Sorry if we cut anyone off, but that's a wrap. Remember, you can catch us live Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern. It's your chance to join the conversation and have your voice heard. Just check the link in the description or visit americastalk.show. Together, through the free exchange of ideas, we can truly make America great again. Don't miss out. Tune in and be part of the dialogue.
All right.